Welcome back to my channel. My name is Kayla. I like to talk about books, book reviews, reading vlogs, things like that. So if any of that interests you, then please subscribe. But today I'm going to be doing just a pretty straightforward book review on a newer recent release called Secluded Cabin Sleeps Six. This is a very new release, so I'm going to try and keep it spoiler-free, at least for the synopsis, but like usual, I'm going to do a synopsis and then I will get into kind of my review and my thoughts on the book, a little bit about characters, storyline, any of that. But as far as I'm concerned, this is going to be a spoiler-free review. So let's just get into it. Secluded Cabin Sleeps Six by Lisa Unger. I haven't read anything by this author before, so I don't really have a lot of her other work to compare this to. The synopsis of the story is, like I said, going to be spoiler-free, so I'm just going to give a little bit of the setup and some of the characters, and then I'll go right into the review. Timestamps will be below, so if you want to skip ahead, you can go ahead and do that. The story begins with a group of friends who are having a little weekend away together in a secluded cabin in the woods, hence the book title. Also just very classically good setup for kind of a spooky mystery moment. The group consists of Hannah, her husband Bruce, her brother Miko or Mickey. He kind of goes by both at different periods of time. You'll understand what I mean if you read it because it has like some different time periods, some flashbacks, some more present day. But anyway, he goes by Miko, and also Miko's wife Liza is there, as well as their longtime friend Cricket and her new-ish boyfriend Josh. So it's basically like the six of them, three couples. Immediately some kind of interesting relationship dynamics are set in place that make for a lot of intriguing mystery possibilities just within like this core group. So one of them is that like Bruce is kind of tired of working for / with Miko, Hannah's brother. Liza is actually pregnant after several miscarriages. This is pretty obvious pretty early on, and nobody else knows. It's just kind of Liza's thing that she knows. A couple other like affairs and things like that are happening, so it's definitely a little bit of a complicated group dynamic, which of course makes for interesting intrigue throughout the unraveling of the story. But this group is not the only factor of people at play in the book. There's also the owner of the vacation property named Bracken, and he also presents some kind of interesting dynamics. Pretty much right away, it becomes apparent that he has cameras all over the property and the house. This isn't just for like safety or something like that, or to make sure nobody like breaks anything or liability. This is like he watches the people. So he watches these cameras almost religiously. Nobody knows about it. They're all like pinhole cameras, which, side note, is a very like creepy concept just in and of itself. This is something that freaks me out about Airbnbs, and I know they exist in hotels too, but it's much easier to do something like that in a vacation rental like an Airbnb than it is in a hotel. That's aside. Anyway, so he's kind of got this creepy air right from the beginning. Again, like I said, it adds like another dynamic. And then there are a few other characters who seem like they are not connected to this core group of people initially, but of course, as the story unfolds, more connections are made and we figure out exactly how. So some of these other characters include a young boy and then eventually man named Henry with kind of a troubled childhood, a troubled past, who we actually follow through the years. So it kind of follows him. There's some background and then present day as well. Although, like I said, his connection to the other characters in the story is definitely not apparent for quite a while into the book. And like I said, I'm keeping this spoiler free, so I will not be releasing that information. But the point is that you have definitely this core group that has very interesting dynamics, the kind of loner owner of the property, and then a few other players who seem like they are kind of random and not connected to the main story initially. I'm just gonna get right into the review, so let's go for it, because my first thoughts are that this setup felt almost to me like off-brand Lucy Foley. I think that it was the combination of the setting, the storm rolling in, there being kind of like a little bit of a creepy owner, groundskeeper kind of person, which I feel like she also often employs in her books. Now, don't get me wrong, she's not the only person who does this, but that plus like the cover styling, it all gave me a little bit off-brand Lucy Foley vibes, if that makes sense. Now, what I want to say is that this book actually surprised me because initially I got those vibes, but it very much came into its own the further into the story that you got. And like I said, as all of the different kind of characters and plot lines became interconnected and intertwined, it definitely felt like, even though it might have some similar vibes to her writing, it was its own thing for sure. And I will say that I think just overall, my prime key takeaway from this was that it was better than I expected. I did not expect that much, and that's not to be mean. I just had no expectations for this author. I don't know, maybe I just didn't have a lot of expectations. I thought it would be okay, but not great. And I actually thought it was really good. I thought that the character development was pretty interesting and pretty good considering that there were so many characters to work with. I actually felt like there was a little more focus on the characters than I would have expected in a book like this. I really, really liked Henry's character. I'm sure other people will like understand maybe who've read it. I felt like he had a really interesting journey. I loved watching his story unfold so much. Hannah, it was an okay journey. I like that she had some character development, but to a certain extent it felt like shoehorned in at the end. I like that there were a lot of characters that were also not that likable or not perfect. They were a little bit layered, like Maiko, Liza even. They weren't like perfect characters. They were a little bit more layered, and I feel like that's kind of more fun to read than just perfect characters. I have a little bit more interesting characters who are a little bit more dynamic, a little bit more complicated. So I was kind of surprised by the character writing and the character development in this book. It was not the best in the world, but it was definitely more than what I expected from this type of mystery thriller type read. So I would say that it was a little more character driven than I anticipated. Definitely still probably more of a plot driven story though, but yeah, definitely a very intertwined kind of plot driven story. I don't know, I felt like even if they weren't the most complicated character arcs, it felt like every character was pretty addressed pretty well, like every point of view character. What I really, really liked was how, like I said, initially you had these characters and stories that felt like they weren't connected. Of course, in your logical mind, you're like, they have to be connected at some point somehow, but you don't really know. And for me, obviously it becomes apparent later, but it was kind of a while, and I liked the journey of figuring out how Henry like was gonna fit into the rest of the group's story. The writing was pretty intriguing. I think that the descriptions were really great, and it kept you interested enough. Like, you were interested in the story, you wanted to get to the end of the story, you wanted to get to the next part of the story, or at least I did. And so it held my attention. Pacing was nice, and the descriptions and the way that the stories all connected in the end definitely were good for keeping a reader intrigued. And like I said, kind of going back to it, yes, she addresses the characters really well, but I would probably consider this a little bit more on the plot-driven side as opposed to the character-driven side. I actually think a lot of different readers could find a lot of enjoyment in this book. Not the best mystery book I've ever read, thriller kind of book I've ever read, but definitely a lot better than I expected. Probably one like little negative gripe I do have about it. I don't have a lot of huge flaws that I want to point out about it necessarily. Like I said, I found it enjoyable. I feel like she overused a few different like phrasings kind of in a way that felt repetitive, but it felt like it wasn't repetitive as in it was like a callback to a theme. It just felt like she came up with a really good descriptor, a really good line, and used it like a few times too many. She definitely had a couple moments where she like referenced Maiko wanting them all to get away on an Instagrammable holiday kind of a thing, and I feel like if you use that phrasing once or twice, it's a fun little commentary on society and that character as a person, but she used that specific type of phrasing like 4 or 5 times, like enough times that I was like, wait, didn't you already kind of use this descriptor earlier in the book? And there were a couple different things like that where it just felt like she used the same type of descriptors a little too much, but not in a thematic way, and just in a way where maybe she came up with a great line and just used it too many times. But other than that, I thought it was like a really interesting little read. Like I said, I think that if you like a plot-driven story, you will enjoy it. I think if you like a character-driven story, you will probably enjoy it more than you would anticipate. Definitely something to keep in mind. But yeah, that's gonna be it for this book review. Please let me know below if you have read this book or if you're planning to read it, what your thoughts are. And yeah, that's gonna be it for this video. So like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I will see you later.